headphones. These are way better.
All right. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Can people hear me?
Are we good to go? We are. Right. Welcome back to Guitar Summit in Mannheim 2024. I have with me Per Nilsson from Scar Symmetry, Swedish. How would you describe it? I've read it's melodic death metal. Is that fair?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. I don't care too much about categorizing things.
Fair enough.
For some people, that kind of thing is super important.
Yeah. But I was listening to some Scar Symmetry prior to doing this interview, and it's really took me by surprise because songs will start with a certain genre and vibe, and then very quickly change and transition into a much heavier kind of a vibe. So as you were growing up as a player, what were you listening to that was creating those, early inspirations for the band?
Well, I have to say about our style that we have, it's sort of like everything that I ever loved about like the peak moments of music is like I try to condense that into one thing. That the bunch of players that we are can perform. Obviously, I'm writing for a metal band, so but yeah, I grew up in the 80s, so I was a child of that time, and I started out by hearing the music that came out from my older brother's room, and he was listening to everything that was the flavor of the day: Iron Maiden, Dio, Accept from Germany, Yngwie Malmsteen came shortly after that and blew my mind, and pretty early on I mean at first I was just mesmerized by the sound of distorted guitar and like the heaviness of hard rock and metal. But then quite quickly I started all like realizing I was very interested in the guitar playing and in lead playing, and I could sort of tell bands that had like the great lead players.
You mentioned obviously Yngwie as probably one of the greatest of them all, but I wouldn't have said necessarily any of those bands that you said feel to me necessarily like quite the sort of route that Scar Symmetry sort of took. Were there other influences that came along later, or was it something that the band almost discovered themselves as they were writing together?
Yeah, I mean those were the early days, and I started playing also around that time when I was, when you stop listening to kids music and you start growing your own thing, and you come into that era of your life, and I started playing guitar at that time when I was like 10, and I went to the music school in our town, was very jazz oriented, and all the teachers were like, it was like very centered around jazz, and I didn't listen to jazz, and I still don't really listen to traditional jazz, but it was just like my guitar teacher who was like, here's another Charlie Parker song. So I learned all of that and all those kind of the harmonies and everything. So I did that in music school, and then on my own I was listening to mostly metal music, and eventually I mean like the thrash metal movement came along with Metallica and Megadeth being the big ones for me. Then we're approaching the early 90s where like grunge came, Swedish and Florida death metal came,
Right.
and it was just like all these kinds of different things that I participated in all of it and enjoyed it.
I mean, why do you think it is that Scandinavia has such a rich heritage in music from this kind of genre?
I don't know.
Is it that you get no daylight in the winter or something? Nothing else to do.
Could be. Like the part of my guitar journey that was sort of the most important was like in my later teens, when I practiced like crazy all day, every day, and that was the time where music, like it wasn't only metal for me anymore. I started listening to fusion music. It was the death metal movement. I enjoyed a lot of the grunge stuff, the shred heroes of the late 80s. And then there were metal bands that started coming up that sort of fused fusion with metal, like the band Death from one of the Florida death metal bands. They did that. They hired two guys from the band Cynic. So both of those bands had elements of like jazz fusion in their death metal, and I loved that. And then I heard Meshuggah the first time in '94. I went to one of their shows in my hometown, and we had only heard that they were supposed to be this incredible band from up north of Sweden. So we just went to see them, and everyone came out absolutely bewildered.
Did Meshuggah take the whole genre to another level for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, it's an interesting one. I want to talk about the journey with your gear and things like that. But was it how did it come around that Meshuggah asked you to cover for Frederick because that was for maybe 4 years or so?
Something like that, depending on how you count.
But was that just a phone call out the blue, or had you known?
Yeah, pretty much. The only one I had ever met was Fredrik, who I was subbing for, and it wasn't even his decision to hire me, because he was like, I'm gonna step out for a while, guys, and they tried to like scramble to find like the right person, and they couldn't think of anyone. But it so happened that I knew some of the people in their organization. Obviously, I didn't know that they were looking for someone, but they're I'm friend with their guitar tech for a long time, and their manager used to work for Scarcimetry like a long time ago, and their monitor tech, he was doing monitors for Scarcimetry at a show, and he's also a guitar player. So he saw me play and liked what he heard. So I already had three people in their organization that all of them were like, hey guys, maybe you should check out this guy, and they.
Did your gear have to change much in the transitions? We should talk about, because you would have been playing Strandberg prior to the Meshuggah call up.
Yeah.
Before that, was it Ibanez you were with, or what was the?
Yeah.
So you went from I'm guessing all of your heroes, or many of your heroes from the 80s and 90s would have been Ibanez players.
Absolutely.
So I guess that was a dream as well to play that. But let's talk about why you decided to change over to Strandberg, and then I'm also interested as to whether or not the guitar worked for the Meshuggah period, or whether you had to change elements of the rig to deal with a different vibe.
Sure. Yeah, I started going to these kinds of things, the trade shows, in 2013, and I met Ola Strandberg, tried his guitars, and I was very curious about them. And back then it wasn't so common. Like now, headless guitars have become really common, and you see it when you walk around the aisles at a place like this. Like 10 years ago, there were no headless guitars at trade shows like this, and now like every little brand has their own version of this. So it's quite cool to see. So at first I was a little bit hesitant, because I came from like I really like the looks of an Ibanez, and the Strandberg is kind of like some of the features of the shape, like this horn, is kind of, it's not very far from it. It's just like missing some stuff here, and obviously the headstock. But Ola let me borrow a bunch of guitars and take home, and they grew on me. And then one day he approached me and said, I want to build you a guitar. And he was like, he didn't want me to sign a contract or anything. He didn't want to, he was not talking about business at all. He was just like, I really like your playing, and I want to build you like the dream instrument. And how can you say no to that?
I'd like to. We'll come back to that question about whether the gear needed to change for Meshuggah, but obviously you've gone. This is I know you do have the Endura neck, but it's
yeah.
It feels like a smoother, like a not quite so angular as the normal Endura.
It's rounded off.
Right. So Is that because all of the Strandbergs were like that when Ola started, or did you ask him to modify the Endura neck to take you back to a more familiar feel?
Yeah, I mean, the Ibanez guitars I played, they all like had those super thin
Hmm.
necks, which I enjoyed. Like I could never play like a Les Paul with a baseball bat
Yeah.
kind of neck. Um, yeah, so needed for my neck profile to be tweaked, and we worked on that a lot.
I didn't realize that Strandberg made any guitars that didn't have the normal
Yeah,
Endura neck.
this
So
is the only one.
that's cool. Well, tell us, because when I've played, my first Strandberg experience was earlier this year, and I really found it forced me to play with better posture and in a different way
Yeah.
to a normal. But can you maybe play us a little bit and show us how did it change your style when you went from the Ibanez to the Strandberg?
Sure. I mean, one thing that, like, when I'm trying guitars now, I played a few amazing instruments here already, and I want to pick it up and have the guitar like this. But when you have a body shape that's rounded here and it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
And when I'm at home, when I'm sitting down to play, I always wear it like this. And this is like really ergonomical to me. And since I don't have the headstock, it doesn't drop either. It's like, it sits really well.
It's a very a very simple change to the guitar, but a very radical improvement in the way it makes you sit.
Yeah,
Let me hear it a little
really
bit.
smart. And like the thing that I didn't like, the thing that I had a problem with the original Endor neck is that, like, my playing is, I mean, when you play like
Your thumb round the side and
yeah, I mean, I often have my thumb, quite high when I. But then I want to suddenly do something stretchy, and then my thumb needs to go down. And what happened with this sort of the angles between the surfaces, I felt like I was hindered by that a little bit. So that's why we needed to round things off.
was the microtonal fret something that you'd been playing with Ibanez before, or was that something you just did with Strandberg?
Yeah, it was never available on any production model Ibanez's.
But had it been frustrating you, that sense of not quite having the intonation that you wanted?
Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
Okay.
Now I haven't properly tuned this guitar, so I probably shouldn't try something. But I'm not in tune, so sorry about that. But I mean, every guitar player knows that you tune a guitar in the A and the G,
Yeah.
the G and D, and they sound good, and then you play a C or something else, and it's like way off. And then you try to retune the G string to find a compromise where everything sounds a little bit out of tune instead of something really out of tune. So I knew that I wanted this because I'm also a recording engineer, and I record a lot of my own stuff. So
It's funny you say that, because that you do find. I mean, I just accept that when I'm playing guitar, I'm never quite in tune, because you just can't be.
And you do things like where you play a major chord and you don't play the third.
Yeah, or you'll bend it. You're sort of bending
Yeah.
into the note or something like that. But it does fascinate me, this, and I think you see it more from people that are doing recording, where just it drives them nuts that things aren't quite 100% in tune. I mean, I'm noticing your right-hand stuff as well. You're obviously a hybrid picker as well. So where did you, was that from school, when you were learning at school, or is that something you developed later?
Yeah, it's something that came later. Maybe because I'm playing guitar and where did I put my pick or something, and then I'm just.
So you're,
and there's something about being able to like hold the strings
okay.
and grab them, especially if you want to play things that are softer.
I would never have associated the style of music that you're playing as you just just using your fingers to pick with. So is there a lot of stuff that you're writing where you like that, you'll go for that softer approach on the guitar?
I mean, most of the stuff I write, like for Scar Symmetry, is like I write the riffs and all of that is picked, of course.
Yeah.
But sometimes when I play solos, I wanna like grab things with the fingers. And I even did that with, like on stage with Meshuggah. Some of the solos, I just like put
Wow.
my pick here, and then I can just like.
You're quite a light player, right? As in just, as in it's a light touch on the
Yeah.
strings. Has that always been how you've played, or was that to get the speed, do you need to have a sort of a lighter touch?
Yeah, I think I play a lot of legato stuff.
Mhm.
It's not a lot of like aggressive alternate picking, and I think it's like it's just what I wanted to hear. And also, when I was young, I was struggling with alternate picking. It was
Mhm.
difficult for me, so I chose to go with the things that I was easier for me, and yeah, and I like having a range of dynamics.
Let's go back to the Meshuggah piece. So were they quite happy for you to just bring your gear that you were using with Scar Symmetry along, or did they want you to replicate sort of Frederick's gear?
Yeah, so what I did, like when I got the offer to do the gig, the first person I called even before my wife was Ola Strandberg.
Okay.
Hey man, this thing came up, and he was super excited for me, of course, and good opportunity for him also and the brand. And so I asked him to build me a couple of 8-string guitars,
Right.
and what I did was that uh, I asked Strandberg to put in Landgren pickups, the M8 that
Mhm.
Meshuggah was using. So I like if I have the same pickup, like that's gonna be a part of it at least. And then they already had a setup with they used Axe effects
Right.
for all their tones, and they use automatic program changes via MIDI. So they already have everything programmed and set up. So I just plugged into
Super
Fredrick's.
easy
Yeah,
transition.
we 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 tweaked things like gain and gate to accommodate my playing style and my guitar.
What was it like going on over to the 8-string? Because that's a different instrument completely to a 6. Isn't it?
Yeah. It's
Was
like,
that, had you been playing 8s before, or was that just you had to learn, the whole new way of approaching?
yeah, I already own an Ibanez 8-string that I had played a bit, and there are a couple of Scar Symmetry songs that are on 8-string, but we never
Right.
played them live. And I never really played them like the song through, like they were just recorded in pieces. Um, so yes, I had played 8-string. I didn't like it all that much. I don't like the increased scale length. It's really hard to mute things when you have 8 strings. It's just a yeah, it's just a big old beast.
Mhm.
Uh, but I got the gig and I had to like just deal with it. But I think I came into it pretty easily.
Oh, that's cool.
And I remember back in like '93 when I got my first 7-string, how I was, it's easy when you're on the thickest, like the low strings or the treble strings. But when you're like in the middle, you're like,
Where's
am
the
I
A?
on the D or the G or like you don't know.
I'm glad it's not just me. Um, we're about 2/3 of the way through. I'm
Sure.
sure everyone would love to just hear some playing. I know you've not necessarily got something pre-prepared, but could you maybe take us through some classic licks and your favorite kind of heavier riffs and stuff, and just maybe I love. I know you said the guitar's not 100% in tune, but I'm always intrigued that when I see frets like this, I think bending and vibrato and everything must surely be weird
Yeah.
or uneven somehow. But you're saying that's not the case, so I'm interested in
Yeah,
sort of hearing
it
something.
looks a lot crazier than it is, and it's like the big one is
Yeah,
over here,
that's
and you don't
massive.
do a lot of bending over there,
That's true.
and I don't even know. So it's not like
No,
a discrete jump or anything. Um, yeah, so it feels like playing any old guitar.
so you? Oh, we have a. It's a. I'm going confused here. It's a 7 anyway. I didn't even
Yeah.
realize that. I was thinking, where's that low B coming from? Um, Gear-wise, obviously we've just plugged into a little Friedman preamp on the floor with a bit of delay. But what would be your go-to setup if you were touring with Scar Symmetry now?
We currently use the HX Stomp XL.
Do you?
Yeah, so
Wow.
tiny little buggers.
Half the audience probably going, "That's cool. I got one of those."
Yeah.
So you didn't. I mean, when did you move away from, touring with tens of thousands of dollars worth of gear and go over to a little effects unit?
I mean, I like to have my tone with me,
Mhm.
and in the early days we just played whatever was available on the tour or in the festival backline.
Tube screamer, any amplifier, go.
Pretty much. We did one show where I was handed a GCM 800, and I didn't have my pedals.
Oh.
I was just like
That's
straight into
ouch.
the amp. You get no sustain on your solos. It was pretty rough. But yeah, it was just so convenient. We had the Pod X3
Really?
floorboards for a long time, and then we play to a click. We have keyboards on tracks, so I wanted to start doing the automatic preset switching, and we did a tour where we used the big Helix rack,
Mhm.
and it sounded great. And then they released the Stomp, and it's like it's the exact same software. It's just in a tinier frame, and I just knew that's just it's gonna sound awesome, and it's super convenient. Does everything I needed to do. I don't need like tons of processing power.
Are you running everything in ear when you're on
Yeah.
stage? So you don't need,
Yeah,
4x12s
exactly.
moving air or anything behind you?
Yeah, and when we play like the small club shows, it's so convenient for our front of house guys to not have tons of noise bleeding into all the microphones on stage.
So no turning back then. You don't miss the old days of 10 4x12s behind you and
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love it, and like if I get the chance to play through an amp, like in a jam session or anything, I dig it.
Yeah.
Something about having the sound being in the room and not like in your
Yes.
head, in your ears.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So what's next? What have you got coming up? And in fact, I know what I wanted to ask you about. And I know I'm going to get the pronunciation of this wrong, but is anyone here in the audience a fan of Per's other project, which is, I called it Cappy, and you said I said it wrong, right? So
Kaipa.
Kuiper. Is anyone here a fan of that? So tell us about the Kuiper thing, because that's obviously a little bit different again.
Yeah. So Kaipa was Sweden's the Swedish version of Yes and Genesis and the 70s prog bands in the 70s. They started in 73, the year before I was even born. So yeah, so they played throughout the 70s, toured like 200 shows a year in a crappy old van. And then they went out of fashion in the early 80s, and then they started up again in the early 2000s, did a few shows with the original guitar player before like they had a split just like they had in the 70s.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, they called me up, and I'm not like I wasn't known for doing that kind of thing, because it's not at all heavy as
So like Alan
Symmetry.
Holdsworth kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a really cool.
And are you
thing
still
for me.
doing that now from time to time?
Yeah, I mean it's a studio project, so
Right.
it doesn't take too much time out of.
That's cool. And will we see Scar Symmetry back on the road next year, maybe, or another album next year?
A bit of both.
Bit of both.
Yeah, I'm currently in writing mode, so and that is very unpredictable. Can go fast, and sometimes it, like last album, took me 9 years. So
Wow.
and I promised the album to be delivered for many of those years, and I made a fool out of myself.
Well, look, I think we're just about coming up to out of time. We've probably got a little bit more if you want to do a bit of playing out for us or something like that. But
Sure.
It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thank you for spending the time with us and coming to Guitar Summit. You can go and see Per's the Strandberg guitar. I don't know if your guitar is on the stand, but the Strandberg guitars are up in one of the other halls there. If you've never tried one, it's an amazing guitar to check out. But yes,
yeah.
lovely to meet you.
After these last few notes, if anyone want to come up and touch the guitar, that's fine.
Cool.
if you're interested.
Amazing.
But
Thank you very
here are some notes for you. I really like to like to outline harmony when I play.
Thank you very much, Per Nilsson.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. That was a pleasure.